So, well, I hope you're getting some useful thoughts, and I hope it helps. It helps me a lot. I'm explaining it, but I don't really know it. That's the problem. It's easier to explain than it is to know, because knowing isn't just to be able to repeat, is it? It's a very deep matter to know. So I don't really know, but and we didn't do it all, of course. So, but this is meaningful, isn't it? And again, please. So this is emphasizing blessed wife's role, and we will emphasize that quite a bit. But please remember, Father's talking to Japanese sisters. So Father making a big emphasis. It doesn't mean this isn't true, but brothers, it doesn't mean that we have nothing to do. Right? It doesn't mean that either. And sisters, it doesn't mean you have to do everything. Just you have to understand you have to do everything.
Or you don't have to be Japanese.
Yeah, that's also true. So please don't misunderstand. You understand? There's many different angles, and you have to catch them all. Okay, so what kind of heart will God have towards the woman, fallen woman, who go back to Him? They have been Satan's wife in Satan's house for thousands of years. We had millions of years, now we're back to thousands of years, and they smell like rotten meat. That's what Father said. So they must die and be reborn through the religious life. They must take their children and their money or their property to God and go into the bone marrow of the Lord of the Second Advent and be sown into true mother's womb and be reborn. And then they have to recreate their own husband who's fallen at him, recycle him and turn him into an Adam. And on that pathway, do you remember that pathway from being reborn through true mother, right? And then they become like younger sister? Well, more detail, right? After there's the womb, there's the baby girl, of course, then there's the girl, then there's the younger sister, then there's the older sister, then there's the wife, then there's the mother, then there's the grandmother. You know, this is the path. But later on, when we talk about Reverend O's lectures, which of course all Father's words, we'll find out Mother's course, right? That's the same course. Do you understand? It's the same course as Mother's course. So Mother has pioneered the course, of course for all women, but actually for all humanity, in relationship to the Messiah. Because to be born again, who do we need? Who are we going to be born again through? Of course we're going to be born again through the mother's womb, but actually the seed is coming from Father, right? So Mother is recreated through Father, and we're recreated through Mother, which is, you know, our sisters in a sense, but actually in the end it's all of us. It's all of us. We all have to be born again. So I hope you catch that content. We're sort of aware of this in relationship to explanations we've heard before about change of blood lineage and how through the blessing our blood lineage is changed. It's a very, very deep matter, you know. And I don't know if I'm going to make it all the way by Foundation Day. In fact, I don't want to be pessimistic or have a bad mind, but I suspect maybe it's not over for me come Foundation Day, you know, even on the process of restoration. It would be ideal for God and True Parents if it was all over, but I didn't do it all, I think. So it means, you know, I need to do the best I can do. Maybe I can make a moment like I made, you know, when I got matched. Maybe I can make a moment like that if I prepare well. Maybe that will be then very significant. Maybe I can make a moment like the moment I decided I'd follow the principle, not all the people who loved me who told me not to. And I made a big decision in my life. Maybe I can make a moment like that, and it will be a moment I always remember, never forget. I didn't forget those moments. You know, they remain very important to me, and you know, sort of a way I remain true to them. You know, I'm still with my wife. I'm still with the Unification Church. So the moment I decided to go with the Unification Church and the True Parents, in a sense, I'm true to it, even if I had my ups and downs. My wife, I'm true to my wife, even though I may have had my ups and downs. We may have had our ups and downs. Do you understand? And I feel I'm proud of it. And, I'm so grateful I didn't mess up. I did mess up, but I didn't mess up, you know. Or even if I did, you know. I mean, you know, the door is open, isn't it? Father and Mother, it's very clear. Please, everybody, come in the door. Yesterday, I think it was Rainer Fuchs was sharing in our leaders' meeting, about coming for the holy wine. He was explaining Father's very, very sensitive heart to anybody who helped the true parents during the restorational course, because if someone helped even just a little bit, even just for a short time, Father has such a generous heart to them. It doesn't matter if they, ended up resting for a bit or not understanding something all the time, whatever. Father's heart's completely open, even to the betrayer, even to the one who, spat in his face and pointed the finger and accused him. Father wants everybody. So, a very important time to reach out. And that's in there as well, do you understand? It's a bit dramatic language, but you can understand it's true. For God, who is Satan's wife? It means just we're coming from that tradition, we come from that origin. That's what we all represent. That's who women are. So of course there's not just women. So what's Adam? What about fallen Adam? Well, we can't talk about him in the same terms, because who is he? He's the person who now his wife and his children have left him. His wife, the way Father described it is, we described it before, the boys go back and they get mum and they take her out. But the way Father described it at this moment, he says the mother has taken her children and she's left fallen Adam's house. And not only has she left the house with the children, she's taken the bank account with her. And she's taken everything with her, and she's taken it to the house of the Lord of the Second Advent. So what does that man who's left behind feel like? I lost my wife, I lost my kids, I lost my money to the Lord of the Second Advent. So he wants to kill his enemy, right? Fallen Adam. Who's his enemy? It's Adam. It's the Lord of the Second Advent. And he will use all his power to persecute him. So that's the way it is for the begotten Son of God. When nobody else is, do you understand? Everybody else is fallen, right? And particularly, this masculine position as well, Of course, I'm not saying no women were against true parents or against Father. Of course, women were against him too. But sort of the typical type of situation. Your man is, doesn't accept someone else taking his authority. Satan doesn't want to accept someone taking his wife away, his children away, his property away, because that's what he did, do you understand? He took God's wife, God's children, and God's property. But God has to take it back, right? But when God seeks to take it back, Satan's not going to let it happen easy. So he wants to kill him. But what's the Messiah's attitude? The Messiah loves his enemy and wants to make a way for them to be saved. So these people are trying to kill Father, but in Father's mind, Father's thinking, how can I find a way to save them so they don't have to be thrown away, so they can be recycled? So how can I save Kim Il-sung? How can I help? How can I save Gorbachev? How can I help save my enemy? How can I save everybody? How can I save the people who betrayed me? How can I bless in the spirit world Hitler, Stalin, all these strange, crazy, mad-sounding things that Father's done? How can I do all of that? That's what's in Father's mind and heart. So just a couple of examples, because this understanding we're learning about here, this is not something that Father just explained about the biblical history or the providential history. This is something that Father used, because we understand clearly through the divine principle, God showed the Messiah Jesus how he should pursue the providence through the Old Testament history. So when Jesus looked at the Old Testament history and understood what was happening, then through that he was being taught by God what he had to do, right? So Father looked at all this history and he understood what was happening, and through that God taught him what he had to do. So he knows he has to employ this type of strategy. So Father directed Mother to fulfill mother and son's cooperation. At what point did he instruct her to do that? He instructed it when he's trying to get to the more like the world level or national and world level type of providence. So this is an example of how Mother was to fulfill that before she, at the same time, in this period when Mother is basically declaring Father. So, when the Women's Federation started, Mother spoke all over the world, right? She didn't really speak at all publicly before that. She spoke to our membership when Father was in Danbury prison, right? In this more public. Well, otherwise, she's there when Father's speaking, right? When Father was in the prison, she spoke, but fundamentally, Mother wasn't speaking in public. And then, from that period when Women's Federation is beginning and leading up to that, Mother starts to speak publicly. And then she speaks so many times. So if you look in that book that David showed you the little section from, which is basically, from Europe's point of view, True Parents work in Europe, it's about all of that. You'll start to see, get all these pictures of Mother's tours. 1992, and then again, and then again, and again, and coming with the True Children, and coming with 3 generations, and Mother's doing lots and lots and lots and lots. And she's giving birth to Adam, in a sense, telling the world that the Messiah's here. So one significant point around the early 1990s, when Mother and the Women's Federation are in that role, after Mother makes her inaugural foundation tour in 1992 for the Women's Federation for World Peace, she goes on a very special tour. She speaks in the United Nations. She comes to Japan and speaks, and then she comes back to Korea to speak. And in Korea, then Mother, in her speaking engagements in Korea, Mother sparks off a very particular type of interaction which Father guided her to be involved in. And this involved the fact that the people who came to Mother's speech, they were some of the key people to gather people and bring them to Mother's speech were Korean CARP. In other words, young people. Young people, in their late teens, early 20s. That sort of group of people. So, and they were witnessing to and bringing to Mother's speeches a lot of young people from the universities who were Christians, or also young idealists of a left political leaning, young people who had a leftist type of view. And Father explained that through doing this, Mother was uniting Abel and Cain and bringing them to Father so they could come to God. And then this was also part of a process which led to a meeting in Moscow where South Korean students, not our CARP members, but South Korean students and North Korean students met one another and interacted with one another. And also, again, our movement was involved in that meeting. And then our movement was also involved in bringing to Beijing students from the West and meeting with communist students from other communist countries, not just Chinese, in Beijing. So all these things together were taken from the Korean level to the sort of global level through Moscow and through Beijing. So North Koreans and South Koreans, and then students representing the whole free world and students representing the communist world. In this period, this was an expression of Father directing Mother to be involved in this providence and through it unite Abel and Cain and create a condition in Korea and then a global condition so that Mother and Son's cooperation could be fulfilled, which could then lead to Adam appearing, as it were, and then bringing this restored Eve and Abel and Cain to God, through Adam, through the Messiah. In other words, a condition for the establishment of God's kingdom on the Korean Peninsula. A condition to unite Korea, North and South, and the world. Eve's role is to unite Cain and Abel. This is also Mother's role, Blessed Wife's role, providentially Japan's role. So you can catch a feeling how Father understands this dynamic and how it's going to work, and is using it in the providence to lay the necessary conditions to be able to unify Korea. So I'm hoping tomorrow I can go through quite a bit of the providence centering on the Lord of the Second Advent. In other words, Father's incredible efforts and Father's incredible wisdom and insight to use this principle understanding to find the way to get the victory, right? And you'll see many, many different ways that Father was using this, but let's be, real. Really, the reality is, although Father did so many things and True Parents did so many things, and to some degree we help with many of those things, on many occasions actually, in the end, it's not fulfilled sufficiently. And somehow the outcomes aren't there. So it's very clear, of course, by Foundation Day, surely, Korea should be unified. That was surely God's intention. Long before that, ideally, Korea should be unified. Korea should have never been divided, right?
No.
So if the right things had happened post Second World War, Korea would never be divided in the first place. And it would be completely different. So there are so many times in Providence where God had something very different planned, and true parents fulfilled their responsibility. So then why didn't it happen? If true parents fulfilled their responsibility, why didn't it happen? True parents make Foundation Day, but does that means everybody can be reborn, but can you be made to be reborn? Get the machine gun, point it at Patricia, and, find a way somehow to force her. Does this work? It doesn't work. So, true parents can make Foundation Day and they can fulfill the portion of human responsibility, which means at last we got Adam and Eve, right? Then the possibility for rebirth is there. But whether Adrian gets reborn or not, that will not be forced upon him, or that will not be made by anybody else. It'll only be made by Adrian, right? Same for me, only made by Tim Miller. And of course, our wives have something to do with it, right? Our families have something to do with it. And then you don't just do it on a family level, individual level, right? Being reborn, family level. Then you've got other levels, right? So this is some sort of national level, world type level, providence. Building up, because the providence goes through vertical stages but also horizontal stages. Individual, family, clan, tribe, nation, world, cosmos, this sort of development. But anyhow, it's interesting, isn't it, to see how Father was working on this and build realistic strategies, to try and make this happen by uniting young people. In some sort of level, we sometimes use this expression, second generation, very specifically to relate to our children. But Father sometimes used this expression just to mean young people, not just to mean our children. So, like I said, in the helicopter, mother's the second generation, although we wouldn't normally think like that. And then we're going to start to look now at the historical application of the formula of restoration, centering on the background behind Jesus' birth. So the focus of the providence is to bring the Messiah, or bring Adam, right? Mother and son's cooperation to be completed so God can send Adam. Adam will come from heaven. Adam will not come from Satan's lineage, will not come from Satan's family, comes directly from God. Woman's role decides whether the Messiah can be born or not. Why? Obviously the Messiah has to be born of a woman, right? The divine principle does not address this important area in any detail. But now we're going to look in more detail from the point of view of the restoration of the three rites. So this is the background explanation. So I think basically now most of us are quite familiar with this background because Father talked about it in relationship to restoration of the blood lineage, or the change of the blood lineage. This is not in detail in the Divine Principle book, but through Father's speeches and words, I think you have an awareness for it. So I'm not going to go through it like painstaking every single detail, right? Because I think you should already know about it. So Isaac and Rebekah had two sons, right? Jacob and Esau. And of course they're in this position to restore elder sonship. And anyhow, it expresses that God could start his providence to send the Messiah from the family of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. Why? Because foundation of faith and substance was made in this family. So of course we know that Abraham and Isaac were involved in making this foundation. Abraham was supposed to make it through the animal offering but failed. And then finally they made it together in a sense through Isaac offering the ram that was caught in the thicket. And then of course foundation of substance is played out amongst their children. So Isaac was going to, of course, when Isaac got to be an old man and was blind, he said to Esau, go out hunting, catch the deer and make me the special meal and I will give you the blessing. Rebekah was very, very shocked. Why was she shocked? Because she knew it shouldn't be like that, right? From the time that she was pregnant, she knew that's not what's meant to happen. Because she asked God, what's going on in my womb? And God says, there's a struggle going on in your womb because there's two nations in your womb. And the elder must serve the younger. That's what God told her in the revelation. So she knew through her revelation that this had to happen. So she understood very clearly that actually Jacob was to inherit, not Esau. So this was to do, of course, with mother and son's cooperation, the restoration of elder sonship. In other words, she's playing a very significant role. Of course, Abraham got his revelations, Isaac got his revelations. Isaac did an amazing thing to accompany his father to to Mount Moriah and to lay down without a struggle, bound, and the knife was raised and he should have been dead, but then the angel came and stopped the hand of Abraham. So Isaac did a lot. And we normally talk about Abraham and Isaac, right? Now we're talking about Rebekah. Because God gave Rebekah the revelation, not Isaac, right? So Rebekah believed God's revelation, but failed to influence Isaac to give the blessing to Jacob. And failed to influence Esau to surrender to Jacob by consoling Esau's heart. Right? That's interesting, isn't it? So the implication is, Rebekah got the revelation, so she should make sure that Isaac knows what he's got to do, right? Because she got the revelation. I'm sure she told Isaac, about the struggle in her womb. But she kept hold of that revelation, but for some reason Isaac didn't. How do we know he didn't? Because he's about to bless Esau, right?
Yeah.
So we know he didn't. He didn't understand. So Rebekah's supposed to hold it and influence her husband so that he understands what has to happen, right? I mean, surely also what's going on is it's manifest to Rebekah that Jacob is the person who should lead the family, right? He's got the more able type nature, and therefore he should lead the family. And all the other things. Actually Jacob did purchase the birthright with the mess of pottage, with the food. But so somehow Rebekah failed to influence Isaac to give the blessing to Jacob, and also failed to influence Esau to allow Jacob to take it without any ill feeling. So actually he's already sold it. So what's he complaining about? It would have been a mistake. He should have said to his dad, sorry Dad, maybe you weren't fully aware, or maybe you forgot because you're an old man now, but actually I sold it to my brother. Don't give it to me, I already sold it to my brother. Ask Jacob in because he should get it, right?
Mm.
Yeah, maybe it should be like that. Esau should have done that. But Esau's very happy to get the blessing. He's going out hunting, going to bring the deer back. Right? So he doesn't know what he should be doing. So think later, because remember what's happening here affects the providence later, right? So think about the women figures and Jesus and John the Baptist and this type of similar content, right? And what's going on there. And who got the revelations? Who got the revelations? Of course, men got revelations too. Joseph also got a revelation from the angels. Zechariah got a revelation in the Holy Spirit, but also the women got revelations, right? Mary got the revelation. Elizabeth got the revelation. Who am I to meet the mother of the Lord, of my Lord? The child in my womb just jumped for joy. So their revelation is also very important. However, having said that, Rebekah did prevent Esau from killing Jacob. How did she do that? Because she warned Jacob, get out, because your brother has said he'll kill you when your father dies. So go to my brother's place, Laban, Rebekah's brother, and take refuge there, and you'll be safe. And Esau's anger will not take him that far, and you'll be okay there. So she saved his life. So Rebekah's shortcomings, if you like, what she wasn't sufficiently aware of. Father expressed her life of prayer was not enough. Duty to her husband. What does it mean, duty to her husband? It means, of course, she should just objectively do everything he says. That's what it means, doesn't it? That's what the duty to your husband is, right? You just do whatever your husband says. If your husband says, don't go to church, if your husband says, don't pray, if your husband says, don't bother about the children, or whatever, if he says any of these things, that you do what he says, don't you? That's what you do, right? No. You don't do that. You don't do that because you have your responsibility, right? So your duty to your husband is to keep your husband right in front of God, right? It's not to do what your husband says if that's not what God wants you to do, right? Or wants your husband to do, or wants the family to do. You uphold the way of God, right? That's your duty to your husband. Your duty isn't to follow your husband, because although we might understand man is subject, woman is object, actually, that's not so simple, right? Clearly, The one who's the subject really is the one who understands the heart of God. So if the wife understands the heart of God and the intention of God, she has to find the way to create influence. So of course what she does is she gets a big whip and she puts on large boots and she stands in front of her husband and threatens him, and then he does what he's supposed to do. That's the way it works, isn't it? What do you think?
That sounds interesting.
Maybe not. So how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you make that happen? How do you win that influence? There's a spiritual background prayer or something, and there's something in the relationship and the dynamic, and there's some way you say it or you don't say it, or the way you do it, or it's a profound matter, isn't it? How you get it to work. But what you're trying to do is secure the will of God. And also, of course, there's a big role in educating the children. Please, brothers, don't think this means brothers don't need to pray. Your wife, send her into the prayer room, and then listen to her very hard, and everything will be fine, right? Brothers, don't have to worry about the children. It's all your wife's responsibility. What do you think? Maybe not, right? So how many times did my wife complain that I wasn't taking care of my children? So many times. Of course, it's completely false, because I took great care of my children. She's just not a good wife, probably. No, probably it's true as well, right? So please don't, again, misunderstand. But please understand, woman is very important in this respect. Why is woman very important in this respect? Because woman is the object, do you understand? Not the object to the bad husband, object to God, do you understand? So if you look at all the religious places, many times you see women very, very important to sustain and uphold and maintain faith, and to play the very faithful roles in upholding the religious tradition. And of course also this bonding and attachment thing I talked about before, although politically correct books on child development are very clear that this is the primary caregiver in the child. Of course, realistically, the primary caregiver is more often than not who? It's the one who's got the breasts, right? It's the one who's got the milk. It's the one who's got, this situation. So father says he looks at mother feeding the children and he feels envious because he can't do it, So this is very meaningful in terms of the bonding process. Of course, husbands are also supposed to bond with, or fathers are supposed to bond with their children too. Of course they are. So again, it's not a get-out for men, do you understand? But of course there's something going on in this bonding and attachment, particularly between mothers and children. So it's very, very significant. But we all know as well, when fathers are completely absent, this is also not good. So again, please don't think that doesn't matter. So failure of the restoration of elder daughtership. Wow, elder daughtership. We thought this was all about elder sonship. So this is explaining about Jacob's family, right? So Jacob goes to Haran to escape his brother Esau, who's going to kill him. And the first person he meets when he arrives there is Rachel. He doesn't know that this is his cousin. He doesn't know this is Uncle Laban's daughter. But he falls in love with her as soon as he meets her. She gives him water from the well, and he becomes, I want to marry this woman. Goes to Uncle Laban, and lo and behold finds Rachel's there, because this is his uncle's daughter. And he says to Laban, I want to marry your daughter. I want to marry your daughter. You can marry my daughter, work for 7 years, you can have my daughter. So he works for 7 years, goes through the marriage ceremony. Beautiful Rachel's got the veil on, so he can't quite see her face. They go through the whole ceremony. They don't turn on the electric light before they go to bed, right? So they're in the darkness, she's wearing the veil. And they get into bed, wakes up in the morning when the daylight streams through the tent, and looks over to the other side, and it's not Rachel. It's
Leah.
It's Leah. And he wasn't going to be married to Leah, and he doesn't like Leah, and he's very, very, very shocked, and he's feeling extremely mistreated. And he goes to Laban and asks what on earth is going on, because he's consummated the relationship, right? So that she's his legal wife. There's no way out. But he goes to Laban and he complains, and he says, what's going on? I wanted to marry Rachel. Don't worry, it's all's well. Don't imagine I can marry my younger daughter to somebody before the elder one's married. You can have Rachel too, it's no problem. Just you need to work another 7 years. But you don't have to wait till after the 7 years. You can marry straight away, but you have to work the 7 years afterwards, right? So there we have now. We have Leah married to Jacob, and we have Rachel married to Jacob. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Think about that one, right? So who is she, Leah, to Rachel? Who is she? She's the enemy of... She's the enemy of love. Because she stole her beloved. Do you understand? She stole her beloved. And who's Laban? Like Satan in a way, do you understand? So he gave, this daughter instead. So she's become his legal wife, right? And she's like a concubine because she's coming along after the first marriage. So there's a big battle going on here, right? So Father explained various things in the background. I'm sure Father said more, and I don't know everything that Father said, but Father explained, for example, that behind this is Rebecca, Jacob's mother, and Laban's wife, in other words, her sister-in-law. Surely also behind this is two other ladies. Who might they be? Who's here?
Sarah.
Generation before. Sarah. Who's here? Hagar. Surely they're also involved in this, right? But anyhow, Father talked about this, and he explained Rebecca should have been praying very hard, right, every day for Jacob, because she knows he has to save the family, right? And if she prayed every day Father said her spiritual antennae, her spiritual senses would have told her something not good is happening over in Haran. And she would have gone over to Haran, she would have travelled to Haran, and she would have discovered the wedding's about to take place, and she would have found out probably from her sister-in-law that Laban has a plan to get Leah married. And then she would have gone and protested to her brother and said, this cannot be. And she would have persuaded Laban's wife to support her, and it would never have happened in the first place. But they would have married one. Or better still, Jacob never has to leave, right? Because she's explained to her husband, Jacob's to become the eldest son. And she's explained to Esau, you have to accept it. It's good, it's best for us all. Can't you understand? And then Jacob never has to leave in the first place. Then Rachel gets invited, right? And the wedding is under their territory, and then it never happens in the first place. So can you see how, because things don't go right, it ends up being a circumstance that shouldn't have been. And then Father also explained what should have happened between these two women. He explains, Leah should have said to Rachel, here is my husband. He's not my husband anymore, he's yours. And she should have left the marital relationship and never sought to be the wife to Jacob. That's what Father explained. That ideally is what should have happened. And that would have been, from this difficult circumstance, that would have been the restoration of elder-daughtership. But because this wasn't resolved, and because they battled with each other, particularly in the matter of love, and particularly then it became in the matter of children, of course, so they had a battle over children. Leah had lots of children, Rachel didn't have any. Rachel got her serving woman to have children, so that she would have children too. Then Leah's getting a bit old and she can't have any more children, so she gives her serving woman to Jacob so she can have more children through her, and they're fighting a battle of children. And in the end, finally, late in life, Rachel has two children, right? Joseph and Benjamin. And this is amazingly wonderful in a way. And we know about this background of not being able to have children and finally have children. We know about it in relationship to Sarah and how this is very significant. We know about it in relationship to Elizabeth, Zachariah's wife, and how that's really important. So this is a very interesting type of repetition in the history. But so her two sons, Joseph and Benjamin, they're in the able position, right? And then there's the other sons, including, anyhow, it's putting all the other sons over there, although some were in a sense from here. But then this turns into 2 spies and 10 spies, right? Because this failure to resolve in this original family, it develops through the history, right? And leads to northern kingdom, southern kingdom, right? Judah and Israel. Southern kingdom, northern kingdom. This is Moses' time, of course. 2 spies. Who are the 2 spies? Joshua and Caleb. And then the other 10 spies. And then, the division between the 2 kingdoms. And then in the process of trying to recover the southern kingdom, which is also losing its faith, Elijah comes to prepare the way for the Lord. So ideally everything would have been recovered in Elijah's time. There were 700 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. That's what it says in the Bible. Not bowed the knee to false gods. And Elijah is supposed to gather the 7,000. anyhow, somehow everything isn't managed completely properly, and later on we got the second Elijah, right, John the Baptist. And John the Baptist is to gather 7,000 to prepare for the coming of the Messiah. So the failure of Leah and Rachel made a remote condition for difficulty at the time of Jesus to emerge because of this background, right? And no doubt these were moments of opportunity when things could have been restored. Interestingly, of course, it isn't actually from... Obviously, Joseph is in an incredibly important position, right? But somehow in the end, it's Judah's lineage, isn't it? That leads to here. Because this is the southern kingdom is Judah. Anyhow. How do we connect to that? Well, we understand there's a certain background goes on, and this is to do with the mission of Tamar, the second lady. So this is Rebecca. The second lady is Tamar. Third lady is Mary, the mother of Jesus. So the restoration of elder sonship inside the mother's womb. Inside the mother's womb. So this is about mother and son's cooperation. So Rebecca has to cooperate with Jacob and Esau, right? So anyhow, let's trace the background history. So here's Adam, right? Fallen Adam. Fallen Adam is a mixture of good and evil. He's in the midway position. He's completely compromised. God can't work with him because one day he's good, next day he's bad. One minute he's good, next minute he's bad. There's nothing to do with him. So when we're in that situation, basically God can't do anything. We need a separation. We need a division. We need to repent. We need to recognize our evil. We need to divide ourselves. Or in the family of Adam, Adam got divided in two through Abel and Cain. Right? God's side, Satan's side. Crossing point, what should have happened is Cain should have become the second son, Abel should have become the first son. This is restoration of elder sonship. Failed. Passed on to the next family. 10 generations later, Noah, second son, first son. Should have been the crossing point. Noah fulfills the foundation of faith. Ham doesn't. Unite with him. Can't stand as Abel. Failure. No restoration of elder sonship. Then we're coming to Abraham's family. Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. So, of course, Abraham should have made the offering correctly. You're keeping pace with me, right? Because you know this really well, yeah? Abraham should have made the animal offering correctly, but he failed, right? Foundation of faith, failure, right? Had he been successful, what's going to happen? Isaac, Ishmael. Son of the servant woman, son of his wife Sarah, right? They're going to play out the Cain and Abel relationship. Isaac, ancestor of the Jewish people. Ishmael, ancestor of the Arab people. For some reason, Hagar and Ishmael get cast out of the home into the wilderness. Actually, God gives them a blessing, as well as this lineage getting a blessing. But anyhow, it remains unresolved, not completed properly. And because the offering isn't made properly, also it has to be made again. So when it's made again, the principle explains it's made actually by Isaac, not strictly speaking by Abraham. And he offers the ram caught in the bush. And then it's his two children, Jacob and Esau. Interesting, they're of course twins. But as you know, there's a battle as to who's going to be born first. So of course Esau's born first, but Jacob is born holding his heel. In other words, it can't be closer. The battle, who's going to get out first? And we know about that content. We just explained about that background. So, and it's successful. Jacob manages, when he's reconciled with Esau, in that moment, elder sonship is restored. And it's a very profound and significant moment. It means that the ancestry of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob becomes the background for the coming of the Messiah. The Messiah comes from that lineage. But the Messiah couldn't come, so the foundation for the Messiah is laid, but the Messiah couldn't come. Why couldn't he come? Because God's foundation is just at the family level. Do you remember that? But Satan has huge civilizations, Egypt, these sorts of very large Assyrian civilization, Egyptian civilization, already belonging to Satan's side. So God doesn't have enough foundation. Also, of course, Abraham failed in the offering, so they've got to wait 400 years. And also what's happened is this restoration has taken place of elder sonship, but it's not taken place till Jacob and Esau are 40 years old, approximately. So it wasn't restored in the womb, right? 40 years of their life, it was unrestored until they could become finally reconciled with God. So, this has to go to a new level. What has to happen is this has to be clarified inside the womb. in order that the womb can be separated from Satan, so that later on Mary can give birth to Jesus. And who plays a very significant role in this? It's Tamar. So here's Tamar's story. Here's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons, right? Fourth son, Judah. Of course, there's all these other sons, and amongst them Rachel's children, Joseph and Benjamin. But actually, something obviously didn't go right? Because somehow, although Joseph is clearly in the able position, he goes into Egypt, sold, Joseph, the coat of many colours, put in the pit, bought by the slave traders, goes there, becomes the prime minister. This is a very important course, right? What is this the course to lead towards? It means that there's going to be a bigger Abel and a bigger Cain. Do you understand? Who's the bigger Abel and the bigger Cain? The bigger Abel is the whole lineage of Jacob's family, also hopefully Esau's family, and they're all going to go into Egypt, and Joseph is going to be is the prime minister, and then the Abel culture, Hebraism, is going to conquer the Cain-type culture, Egyptian culture, right? Even before Greco-Roman culture and all the rest of it. Something like that was supposed to happen, but it didn't happen, right? Anyhow, Judah's lineage becomes very significant, and this is the background behind how it becomes so significant. Also remember Judah's in a special position, because do you remember when they come to meet Joseph? The drought is there, and the brothers come to meet Joseph, and he gives them the grain, but then he hides the precious things in there, and he holds, one of the sons, and then they come back, and they come back again. He holds Benjamin. They come back again, and but when he held Benjamin, the person who says, "Please hold me instead," that's Judah. So he places himself in this position of like a restored type of Cain figure. He says, "Please take my life. Don't take Benjamin's life, because if Benjamin doesn't come back, that's the end of my dad." Because he lost Joseph, and now he's going to lose Benjamin. So he has a very, very special heart and attitude, which somehow, when for whatever reason it can't be that Joseph-Benjamin lineage, it means it comes through Judah's lineage. So this amazing thing happens in Judah's background, which is recorded in the scripture, which is so shocking and dreadful that nobody would want it recorded in their family history, right? But it's recorded in the Bible. It's so weird and strange and unacceptable and so contrary to law and convention and morality that you wonder why on earth it's there. And the father explains about it. So this story. Judah, his wife dies. First of all he has 3 sons, and the eldest one marries Tamar. He dies, doesn't have any children, so the tradition is very, very clear. Onan, Er's younger brother, should marry Tamar, and the child they have will not be Onan's child, it will be Er's child, right? So Onan's having a sexual relationship with Tamar, and the Bible says he pulled himself out of her and he sowed his seed on the ground instead of in Tamar. And when he did that, he died, he dropped dead. And Tamar understood something from God. She got a revelation from God. She understood this is very, very important. Absolutely, I have to bear a child to this family. And then, of course, what should happen next is Shelah, the younger son. He should be married to Tamar, but he's young. And, already his 2 oldest sons have died, so Judah doesn't want to give Shelah to Tamar. But Tamar knows what she has to do. We don't know all the other inspirations or her prayer or everything revealed to her, but surely what she did was completely instigated by God. So Judah's wife has died, and he goes into a period of mourning because his wife has died. And of course his wife has died means he hasn't had any sexual relationship because his wife's died. And then after the period of mourning is over, he leaves to go to Timnah. And on the way, Tamar waylays him, as it were. And she is beside the road dressed provocatively as a prostitute. And of course, she tempts Judah into the relationship with her because she can't get the way to get the seed and to preserve the lineage of this family out of whom the Messiah is going to be born. So at complete risk and sacrifice, she seduces him. But she's very wise. She gets the ring and the staff and so on so that she can identify who this is. And Judah says to her, I don't have any money, I can't pay you, I don't have any goats and sheep with me, I can't pay you. But take these things and then, I'll pay you later. And they come to pay her, and she... Anyhow, through the whole process in the end, she becomes pregnant, clearly. Normally what should happen to Tamar, of course, is she's a widow, she shouldn't be pregnant. So when her pregnancy is discovered, then actually she should be stoned to death. But she reveals then, when her pregnancy is discovered, she reveals the person who made her pregnant, because she keeps hold of these tokens which were given to her, but she doesn't accept the payment. And then she reveals it's the man who has this staff and this ring, that's the man. And then, of course, she's not killed. Judah righteously relents. And then when she gets pregnant, she again has twins. And then this phenomena occurs during the pregnancy and during the birth. The phenomena is that Zerah appears first out of his mother, but he comes out of his mother's hand first, arm first. And the midwives tie the red band around his arm, but actually, of course, you can't be born arm first, right? It's not going to work. So the midwives put the hand back in, and then actually when they are born, it's not Zerah that's born first, it's Perez. So this is restoration of elder sonship inside the mother's womb, right? You heard this type of content, right? So this restoration inside the mother's womb means in the next stage, because it goes Rebecca, Tamar, Mary. Mary isn't pregnant with twins, is she? She's pregnant with one child. Through this background, the sacrifice of this woman, Mary's womb is sanctified or separated from Satan. That's how Father explains. So 2,000 years later, Jesus is born to Mary, who inherits the foundation of Rebecca and Tamar. What sort of foundation is that? It's this type of attitude. According to family ethics, Tamar's conduct was unforgivable, but at the risk of her life, not for sexual desire, not any personal motivation, but motivation to preserve the blood lineage of the Messiah, so the Messiah can be born. This is the bride religion, right? So Tamar looks like a very bad lady, right? But she's actually the highest type of lady. Because what's the position of the religion? The position of the religion is to produce the woman who can give birth to the Messiah, and then the woman who will marry the Messiah. So she does this incredibly important matter to secure the womb from which the Messiah can be born. And she does so at the risk of her life. Completely opposite of Eve's conduct. She's not doing it to gain anything for herself. She's doing it at great risk to herself to preserve the blood lineage through which the Messiah will be born. So Tamar has absolute faith, puts God's things first, and absolutely fulfills God's will. This is the highest standard of religion. This is the standard of the sister before the blessing, or the standard of the nation of Japan as the Eve nation, or maybe more profoundly, the standard out of which Father could be born, or the standard from which Mother emerges as the bride for Father. It's this highest standard of religion. It's this heart that's completely, the virgins awaiting the coming of the bridegroom. This incredible attitude of religious people who really understand somehow they have to completely be obedient to God. So of course Mary exemplifies the same type of spirit. I am the handmaiden of the Lord. Whatever you say, God, that I will try to do. So then this is an application of that content in Father's providence, right? The providence of Father can be born. So we don't know to this day all the things behind Father's birth, right? We don't know to this day everything. We don't know the closest content, what happened in Father's immediate family. But we do know some content. We know, of course, that Father inherits from Jesus' time, but on the national level, a certain condition was established through which Father could be born. What was this condition? This condition was an incredible sacrifice and effort on behalf of the Korean people to gain their liberation. Sadly, they didn't gain their liberation. But after the end of the First World War, already Korea was under Japanese colonial rule since 1905, right? 12 years plus by the time of the end of the First World War. And then the Korean people sent a message to the League of Nations, saying to the League of Nations that they wanted to have self-determination. What did that mean? They wanted the end of Japanese colonial rule, and they wanted to become an independent nation, right? So behind the League of Nations, particularly from the American president, who's had a lot of inspiration behind it, Woodrow Wilson, he had a whole idea for the end of colonialism and self-determination for nations. So they shouldn't be under colonial rule. And anyhow, appealing to the League of Nations, in 1919, there was a big demonstration by the Korean people. They were under Japanese military rule. It was very dangerous to demonstrate. But all over Korea they demonstrated to speak out to the world, and particularly the League of Nations, that they should give them self-determination. And the person who led that whole demonstration in spirit, she's what the Koreans regard as their Joan of Arc figure. And that is a young girl of 16 years old called Yu Guan-sun. Yu Guan-sun. So Yu Guan-sun was this very amazing young woman who was so pushed by God and the spiritual world to lead and to inspire and to encourage people to participate in this liberation movement on behalf of Korea. And she was so brave and so courageous, and she hid under her clothing Korean flags which were not permitted, and she produced them in these demonstrations, and she led these demonstrations, and she was arrested by the Japanese military police, and she was taken away, and she never appeared again. She disappeared. And finally, after appeal after appeal after appeal, particularly from American Christian missionary, finally they produced her body. And, anyhow, her body was in 6 pieces in an oil drum, because she'd been very, very terribly tortured and mistreated. But our father asked the Japanese nation, the Japanese Providence, as it were, our membership in Japan, to make a condition. So that was the condition. Because of that heart and offering of the Korean people, led by Yu Guan-sun. Who was Yu Guan-sun? She was manifesting the spirit of Tamar, and the spirit of Rebecca, and the spirit of Mary, if you like. And because of that foundation, that created a national condition for Father to be born. Of course, the wider, global, more external condition, what was this? For Father to be born?
First
World War. First World War. The victory of the able side, right? And so Father asked Mother in this period. Well, Father first of all asked the Japanese membership in 91-92 to hold a whole series of rallies to remember Yu Guan-sun. And what did they do through this? Our Japanese church membership, representing Eve's position, they united 2 groups of Koreans. Because during the Korean colonial rule period, many Koreans came and they lived in Japan, right? Because they were working, under the Japanese to do all sorts of menial tasks as Koreans, because of course there was huge racial discrimination towards them. So when the Second World War ended and Korea was divided, some of those Korean people's relatives were in North Korea, some of them were in South Korea, and fundamentally there was a division between that Korean population, between those who had their relatives in North Korea and those who had their relatives in South Korea. And they created 2 different associations. And one was somehow representing South Korea, the other representing North Korea. One representing communist perspective, one representing more, democratic freedom perspective. So Father explained that these 2 groups of people represented like Perez and Zerah in the womb of Eve, the Japanese nation. And the Japanese movement brought these 2 groups together in these rallies in order to create this condition so the Messiah could be born, not, born as Father was then, but also born during this period when through mother and son's cooperation, mother has to testify to Father, right? So can you understand what's going on here?
Yeah.
This time it's, Japan in this role as the mother, and this is the sons. And it's trying to create a further condition for Father to be able to appear in front of the world. What happened as a result of this? Father wasn't able to enter Japan during that period. He couldn't get permission to enter. Remember when Father went to Danbury? And this accusation that he committed this crime in tax matters, which of course wasn't true, this was preventing him entering Japan. But at this moment, he was actually allowed to enter Japan. He could enter on the foundation of that period of making this condition. And it looks like something would really turn around in the Providence of that period. Father was trying to create that condition. Okay, so Jesus' family and Mary's mission. Mary's mission in Jesus' cause. Secrets of Jesus' family. So, again, you know this content. And I already started to talk about it a little bit. So Mary gets the revelation, right, from the angel Gabriel that she's to give birth to the Messiah. She can't believe it because she's a virgin. She never had any relationship. And then after she gets the revelation, she goes to the house of her close relatives, Elizabeth, her elder cousin, and her husband, Zechariah. And she walks through the front door, and immediately her revelation is confirmed. Elizabeth says, "Who am I to meet the mother of my Lord, the mother of the Messiah? The child in my womb has jumped from joy." Who's the child in the womb? John the Baptist. It's John the Baptist, right? It means John the Baptist is already acknowledging Jesus is, the womb in which the Messiah that he's come to prepare for, because he's come in the spirit and power of Elijah, right? You know all that background, Zechariah's revelation. Zechariah in the Holy of Holies gets the revelation, doesn't believe it, struck dumb because he doesn't believe it, comes out and, amazing things have happened, and then finally John gets born sometime after, what happens with Mary, and it's such a significant and famous and well-known, birth, John's birth. But actually, unfortunately, Jesus' birth doesn't become famous because it's something very difficult is going on here. Of course, Elizabeth is Zechariah's legal wife, right? Long time, old lady, can't have any children. Miraculously, suddenly she's pregnant. And Mary comes to visit, and then, Elizabeth gets the revelation too. And Father explains fundamentally, led by Mary and Elizabeth, Zechariah understands what he has to do. He understands Mary has to become pregnant. And Zechariah and Mary, interact with one another with Elizabeth's absolute support and permission in order that she can become pregnant. So that her womb is separated from Satan. How is it separated from Satan? Because she's receiving this inheritance from Rebecca and Tamar. How can she receive this inheritance? It's a matter of heart. Because her heart is the same heart. And she has this incredible experience. But remember, this is the legal wife. This is the concubine type of position. Or this is the elder sister, this is the younger sister. And there's this background, right? Coming from Leah and coming from Rachel. And coming through the whole history of the chosen people, through the 10 spies and the 2 spies, through the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. There's all that background there. So there's a difficult background. So, again, what Father explained is, of course, it's clear Elizabeth should not have just supported that Zechariah and Mary relate such that Mary becomes pregnant, but actually she should have continued to support this situation. And together they should have continued to support this situation. So Mary, 3 months, after her coming to the household, she leaves again. But when she leaves, she's already pregnant. So this is not so simple situation she finds herself in. So again, imagine she's had the revelation that she'll bear the Messiah. It's confirmed by her elder cousin, her cousin's husband, she respects so much. They do this thing together to allow the Messiah to be conceived, and then, lo and behold, she finds herself abandoned and thrown out, and how difficult it is then. But she understands who she's supposed to be, and she tries desperately to find a way, and she goes to Joseph. And of course, Joseph gets his own revelation, right, to look after her and to receive her. God tells him he should do that. But the Father explains Joseph's question to Mary is, well, I know God told me I had to marry you and save you because she should be stoned to death, but just tell me, how come you're pregnant? How come you're pregnant? And Father explained she couldn't say. All she could say was, it was the Holy Spirit. In other words, this didn't happen from human intention or human desire. This only happened because of God and because of love of God. And what is this family? This family is, the high point. It's in the spirit of Tamar and Rebecca. What does this mean? It means the highest sacrificial spirit of religion. The highest indemnity type of cause. Absolutely putting God and first and your whole life at risk. So they all put their lives at risk. They should all be dead, right? If this was known, they would all be dead. And this is very, very serious because this is the priest, This is the high priest. It's a very, very, terrible situation in a sense. So Mary's placed in a very difficult position. So she becomes reliant, of course, upon Joseph. And then that's very, very tricky. She can't tell him. Of course, he saves them. He gets the revelation. Take Mary and the child. Herod's going to come and kill them. So take them out and go into Egypt. He goes into Egypt. Herod comes with the soldiers, the slaughter of the innocents, all the baby boys under 3 years old are all killed by Herod's soldiers. But behind this background, of course, what should have happened is that these two children should have been brought up in the same household. Because Mary shouldn't have been thrown out. And everybody should have understood what was going on. Zachariah knows, Elizabeth knows, Mary knows. They know who John is. Revelation. Comes in the spirit and power of Elijah. Prepare the way for the coming of the Lord. They know who Jesus is. Mary's revelation, Elizabeth's revelation. They're going to bring them up in the same household and everything's going to work in some special way. Then also this situation, they'll explain about that in a moment. That's John the Baptist's younger sister. We don't even know from the biblical account there was such a person, but Father's very clear there was. So what's going on here, this is about the bride religion, not only creating the womb out of which the Messiah can be born, but also providing the bride who's going to be married with Jesus so that he can become the God of the day with his wife to the God of the night and restore the position of the true parents so everybody can be reborn. So the most important mission of Jesus is to get married. Get married. Has to get married. But it's so difficult to get married. Very, very difficult to get married. So, anyhow, this is original Adam, right? This is Eve, this is the archangel. So the archangel took God's wife, Adam's wife, and made her his wife. Adam and Eve were as brother and sister, right? But the archangel took Adam's sister to actually be Adam's wife. Not just meant to be his sister, meant to be his wife, right? And that's what happened in terms of the fall. So now what has to happen in the restoration course is, here's Adam, Jesus, here's Eve, John the Baptist's younger sister, here's the archangel John the Baptist, right? But what's the background? In the background something's gone wrong, and this is to do with the failure of the restoration of elder sistership. So what should Elizabeth have done? Elizabeth should have supported Mary, right? No matter what. And because of their connections, and because the connections between them, Mary gets the revelation, Elizabeth recognizes it, right? They're going to make... Zachariah's a very faithful man, right? But where did he get the direction from for what happened? He gets the direction from these women, right? That they support him and they reveal to him. And they revealed, how's their unborn son going to bear testimony to the Lord? The Lord has to be born, right? And they discover how the Lord has to be born. But then Father explains something happened between Mary and Elizabeth. Something happened which meant there was a separation in heart. So he explains things like, for example, Zachariah can't simply make Mary pregnant as a certainty through one relationship. This is an ongoing situation. How to make sure she gets pregnant, because she must get pregnant. Elizabeth is an old lady and she's pregnant. And it's not easy when you're an old lady to be pregnant, right? And your husband is having a sexual relationship with a very beautiful young cousin. And he has to not just do it once, but once you were up for it, do you understand? Maybe 3 times you were okay for that. Maybe, I don't know, do you understand? We don't know everything. But Father intimated, Father indicated that something happens where Elizabeth just can't deal with it anymore. And although she knows, who am I to meet the mother of my Lord? But actually she goes against the revelation of God. Do you understand? She can't bear it anymore inside of herself. And because she can't bear it, then it's very difficult for him. And then Mary has to leave. And she has to go to Joseph. And then she's placed in this very difficult position. So you've heard Father talk about Mary's situation and how she lost her providential connection. What finally breaks Mary's understanding of who she is? It's when she... when she has relationship with Joseph. Because Joseph and Mary are not supposed to have sexual relationship, right? He's also, in another way, from another point of view, he's also in the archangel position. He's also, this is a very righteous family, right? This is a very righteous family in background as well. These two families, they have an interaction with one another to make this. I don't know how it would all have worked out, but anyhow, Joseph is a very righteous man. But Mary finds her life saved by Joseph, and then his question is always in his heart, who's the father? And he protects her, and he doesn't have a relationship with her, and he protects the baby Jesus. But then at some point, Mary, who's completely indebted to Joseph for her life, at some point she can't withhold herself anymore. Joseph wants to have a relationship with her as his wife, and she allows him to have that relationship. And Father explained, then her connection to God and her revelation is cut and dimmed. And then she loses it. She loses the understanding of who Jesus really is, and she's not living her life anymore for Jesus to fulfill his thing. And of course also they're out of it, do you understand? They sort of know maybe what their son has to do, but they can't acknowledge what has taken place in their family. And then when Jesus comes to... Father explained, Jesus came to Mary 3 times to ask to be married. First time was when he was 17 years old. And Jesus said to Mary, I want to marry John the Baptist's younger sister. And then Mary can't go there. She doesn't know how to go there. Because she knows in a sense who Jesus is, but she's put herself in this place where she's done something which has cut her off from that source of inspiration and understanding. And it's a very difficult position, and she won't support that, what Jesus is asking for. Then Father said again in his middle 20s, sometime like that, Jesus again came to his mother and said, I need to marry. I know I have to marry. And his mother doesn't support it. And then finally, just before he begins his ministry at 30 years old, Jesus comes again to his mother, Mary, and asks again. And finally, she says no, and then he leaves that foundation. He can't work with that foundation, and he goes and looks for his own disciples and a new family and a new bride.
She's his half-sister though, right?
Yeah. There's also, do you understand this? There's this restorational type of content. Adam and Eve were brother and sister. So please understand there's so much complexity, but do you understand how this is against morality and convention? So what's Tamar's position? Is it very moral to dress up as a prostitute, to seduce your father-in-law? This is not very moral, right? But this is the way that Jesus' lineage. It's the way a womb was separated. Do you understand? So there's something going on here which is a profound indemnification at the risk of life. So, let's see what I pushed the wrong button, sorry. So what's the most important mission of John the Baptist? It's to indemnify the archangel, or to offer his sister as a bride for the Messiah. So that situation there, that family has such a significant role to play. And presumably Zechariah and Elizabeth, they're old people. Presumably, John the Baptist finds himself in the key position, not just in terms of bearing testimony to Jesus and baptizing him and so on, but also he would have been the person who would have given him the permission for his sister to be married to Jesus, right? Because of the failure of John the Baptist, Jesus had to leave his home and start his public mission. This is to do with John the Baptist not continuing to testify to Jesus and not bringing his whole foundation to Jesus. So Jesus started his own mission in search of his brothers, sisters, mothers and bride beyond his physical family. So who was prepared to be the first disciples of Jesus? Clearly, number one, John the Baptist. And John the Baptist prepared a whole discipleship, do you understand? Inside Belly Church, right? Mrs. Ho-Ho Bin and her husband, they prepared a whole discipleship for Father, right? They're all ready. They've all spent years and years and years making food, making clothes for Jesus to console him, and then making food and clothes for the Messiah, because the Messiah is going to be born. And the revelation inside Belly Church, because Mrs. Bin's revelation is the Messiah will be born physically. All that background is there, right? So, similar type of situation going on in this situation here, John the Baptist's role. So, and then this connects in to all this string of events that takes place. And again, there's all sorts of background in here which Father didn't explain everything about yet. But surely there's so many things in here. So, of course, Jesus has to go and look for a family, a spiritual family of discipleship. And he has his 12 disciples. And then amongst them, of course, there's this one, Judas. And on one level, we understand somehow he's in the position of the keeper of the purse, the sort of accountant situation. And we understand that, there's this woman with the alabaster jar, right, and the precious ointment, and that if you'd sold that, you could have helped so many poor people, and something's going on there. And then we also understand Father intimated something about this woman, Mary Magdalene, and some connection and some resolution of the need to find a bride, and there's all sorts of things going on here, and some connection between her and Judas, and there's all sorts of other things that Father still hasn't maybe fully revealed or explained, or maybe has, but we haven't heard it all in complete detail yet. Anyhow, Judas betrays. Prayer in Gethsemane. Father, Jesus is there with his 3 closest disciples. Pray with me. And when I heard this lecture from Reverend Yu, he explains, had they prayed with Father, with Jesus, same position of course. Had they prayed with Jesus, Jesus could still have become true Father. What does it mean? He says, when they prayed with Jesus before, there was the Mount of Transfiguration, right? Mount of Transfiguration, you remember? Mm-hmm. And Moses and Elijah came down, and they... Shall we build an altar here? No. Shall we build an altar here? To remember this incredible event. Father explained that had they supported and prayed, some phenomena could have occurred, which meant that even in that moment Jesus could have escaped, death and been able to be married. Father said about his own life, the most dangerous time for him was when he wasn't married. So after his divorce from Mrs. Che, right, until 1960, this is the most dangerous time for Father, because Satan wants to kill him before he marries. Because if he marries, already that's, you've got to kill him before he's married. And also this marriage has to become, completed or finalized on a certain level. So there's a very, very difficult period for Father until 1960, and even in a sense beyond that, because Mother's establishing her position in a sense, but particularly before 1960. Anyhow, they don't unite, and the cup doesn't pass, and goes to Caiaphas, gets taken to Pilate, gets crucified, and then of course we know that Jesus has this amazing attitude. So as far as Jesus is concerned, understand the position he finds himself in. So Father sentenced to 5 years forced labour means death, right? So Wonpil Kim, is this alright for Father or not? Tim Miller, yes it is. Reverend Wonpil Kim, no it isn't. Jesus, right? Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. But if not, whatever you will, God, I will do it. This is not an easy question, do you understand? It's not, fine, God, if I don't have to, that's okay. If I do have to, that's also okay. This is not okay. Because Jesus knows he has to get married. Jesus knows he has to make the true parents. Jesus knows how to liberate God. Jesus committed his whole life and everything to liberate God. So he doesn't want to die, before this is completed. And, had they supported him, maybe he doesn't have to. And then he's brought in front of Pilate, and what happens? Pilate's wife had a revelation. Don't kill him, don't kill him, don't kill him. But anyhow, difficult for Pilate, so he asked the people, Barabbas, Jesus, other chance. So many opportunities, even in the last minute, to snatch the situation. But, doesn't get snatched. And Jesus does die. And then Jesus on the cross himself, my God, why have you forsaken me? What does this mean? Is this an easy moment? This is not an easy moment. It's like all I did, at the risk of my life, it made nothing. It made nothing. It's like my life came to nothing. But in the moment of nothing, when you could complain about the people and you could complain about God and Satan could take his spirit, do you understand? Take his spirit. Then finally Jesus says, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. I commend my soul to God. And then he gets the victory, he gets the internal victory. He thinks about God, not about himself. And because of that, then he got the victory over Satan, right? And on the foundation of that, Jesus can be resurrected. So if Jesus didn't make that victory, do you understand? then Jesus cannot be resurrected. So when I think about that for myself, that's those moments. Do you understand? When you might think my life, what have I, where are my dreams? Where am I? Even the things I wanted to do for God, have I been able to do it all? And I might think, well, actually, it's not as much as I hoped it would be. And even for me, do you understand? For you. And we have to understand we have to get the victory. And then something can emerge out of that. And that's our rebirth. This is our Pentecost. This is our foundation day. Okay.